Hello there, Romans here, and welcome to my next music review. Today is going to be Orphaned, Unsung Prophets and Dead Messiahs.
Music review. Music review.
Music review. Music review.
Orphaned is a Oriental progressive group from Israel. The only other group I know from this country is Distorted Harmony, also a progressive metal band. Their first album is really very good. And Orphaned are also known to be the pioneers of Oriental progressive music. It means that they combine their love for metal with their traditional folk music. So Eastern influences are pretty dominant in their music, and they are probably the most famous metal band to do that. Now, I must confess, I haven't really heard their previous albums before, therefore I decided to take the new record as a sort of a starting point for me. From what I've heard, I know that the first two albums from Orphaned were pretty much going in that direction of a death metal, doom metal combined with progressive and Eastern influences, but their music went towards more of a melodic approach with their last couple of releases. So today I'm going to talk about their latest record that is coming out on the Friday 26th. So let's look at the new record, which as of now I've heard 7 times already. As I've said before, Orphaned are famous for combining their version of a death, doom, progressive metal with Eastern influences, hence the name Oriental progressive metal. But it's actually pretty risky to do that, because if you do a record where the whole record is really going in this direction, a huge risk you may face is that the songs may get essentially kind of repetitive, predictable, and you may just have that feeling that you're listening to the same song again and again. You know, there's only so much you can do within all those Oriental riffs. I think that a very good example for me is, now this is strictly subjective, but this is a band Mireth from Tunisia, who also are famous for combining kind of like heavy progressive metal with Oriental influences. And for me personally, their records are kind of like that. You know, when you're listening to first 2 or 3 songs, you're like, wow, this is so cool. But something like 4th, 5th track, I already had that feeling like, okay, this is the same song again and again, and it's kind of like predictable. Fortunately, this is not the case with Orphaned. This album is just so well balanced that you will never get this feeling, and you will never really get tired of all those Arabic scales and all those things that are very exotic. When it comes to the songwriting, as I've mentioned before, their first 2 records were kind of going in that death metal direction, and even on this album you have some songs that are kind of reminiscent of a melodic death metal genre, of course with Oriental influences. For example, We Do Not Resist, one of the singles from the record. This song is, for the most part, low death growls, and you can find them on many other tracks, but this song, along with Only the Dead Have Seen the End of the War, are songs that are almost dominantly with death metal vocals. But even though I am not really a big fan of this kind of a singing and this kind of a music, they work really very fine in these songs, and they were not bothering me. I've actually enjoyed them quite a lot. I'm personally more of a fan of screaming, like in metalcore, but they sound really great. They actually, within the melodic context of the songs, they really worked very well. Then you've got some classical progressive tracks, like for example the first track, The Cave, which is almost 8 minutes long, and then you've got a song called Chains Fall to Gravity, also around 9 minutes. Both of these songs have a very sonic character, especially the first track on the album, The Cave. When it started, it immediately reminded me of the song The Last Milestone from the Last Leprosy record, Melina. There are also some parts that reminded me of the ending part of the song Gate 21 from Serj Tankian. I was kind of expecting those high notes. Both of these songs are pretty much classical progressive tracks, and I like that this is the balance I've been talking about on the record, that you've got some kind of like typical Oriental metal riffs, but then there are many parts that are softer, or you've got many parts that have almost soundtrack-like quality. Also, the whole record is like a conceptual record, and the songs are very cohesive. They work within the album very well. Many times it happens that one song fades into another. You also have some songs that have more of a typical song structure, like a verse, chorus, instrumental break, and a chorus. For example, Left Behind, Take My Hand, or a single like Orpheus. Many of the other songs are much shorter, and there is not really that much of a focus on lyrics rather than on the music itself. Many of those tracks are more leaning towards progressive rock. For example, the last song called The Manifest, Epilogue, is a song that has almost Pink Floydish atmosphere. And there's a funny thing, there is one theme that will immediately remind you of the main theme from Jurassic Park. Now it's kind of tricky to do something like that in a song, because if you really know these iconic melodies, you can't get rid of the feeling or can't get rid of the certain need for the melody to go in a way you're used to. That is just a minor fault, really. As I said before, there are many Oriental influences and elements on this record, and probably the most exotic track on the album is a track number 5 called Yedidi or Hedidi, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. It's a song that's sung in Arabic. This is, I think, probably the most Oriental the Orphaned get on this record, because one of the features of Oriental music is those semitones and those half tones and kind of a tones that you don't use in normal scales, and this song uses them the most. If you are not really used to this kind of music, some of those notes may even sound false or out of key for you or out of pitch. You may be like, well, was it right? But this is really their traditional folk music, and this is really one of the most unique things in the music. When it comes to the production is top-notch. It's great. The last 2 reviews I did were for Fall Out Boy and Asking Alexandria, and the problem I had with the production that both of these bands had on their last records is that the production was very generic. It could have been used for any musician and they would still sound the same. Orphaned have a huge production, but it works for the songs. It gives it very epic and very high produced feeling, but it doesn't really take away performability on stages, and that's important. You've got many huge vocals, I think especially female vocals, that kind of remind me of the band Rhapsody of Fire, and I really love the instrumentation on the album. It's not just the guitars, drum, bass and keyboards, but you've got a lot of typical instruments for Oriental music. What I also like about the record are collaborations. The band collaborated with the guitar player Steve Hackett, formerly known from Genesis, and there's also a collaboration on the lead single from the album and the only song that has a video called Like Orpheus, where Hansi Kirsch, the singer from Blind Guardian, contributed with lead vocals. And it kind of made me thinking, I don't really like rap or hip-hop, but it seems like these artists help each other out and collaborate with each other quite often, and this is something that doesn't really happen in rock or metal music. And I really like how these bands kind of helped each other, especially if you watch the video for Like Orpheus. There are 2 main characters, one of whom is a Blind Guardian fan, and you can see that he has Blind Guardian LPs, t-shirts. The other one is an Orphaned fan, with Orphaned CDs and LPs and t-shirts. One another thing that I really love about the record is that I'm a huge fan of Prince of Persia, especially the Warrior Within computer game, and this whole record just really has that same atmosphere and mood. When it comes to the lyrics, the whole record is a concept record, meaning that the songs kind of like show this story. The whole story seems like a journey of Kobi Fari, who is the frontman of the band. The first track, The Cave, kind of shows this cave as an image of certain imprisonment, of a darkness, of a cage. And we see this character who tries to break from the chains. There's a lot of social criticism of media, as the record says, of unsung prophets and dead messiahs. And there's certain need to break free from these chains, to avoid blindness. He also wants to inspire other people on his journey. And there's also a song called The Brother's Keeper, where he refers to all the other people as his brothers, and he wants to show them the right way, he wants to set them free, and he wants them to know the truth, to see the light, to not be affected by lies that we see in media, for example. The 12th track, Only the Death Have Seen the End of the War, as one of the most brutal songs on the record, has also one of the most radical solutions to this, where he says that the prophet, the false prophet, should be killed. Now this is rather harsh ending of the story, but then there's the last song, The Manifest, where he pretty much claims that there will always be these prophets and messiahs, but there will always be people to oppose them, either through art or through any other means necessary. I also must say that Kobi Fari is a great singer. I really love his accent. He's got a very strong Arabic accent, but it works for the songs very well. Now, if you had an American singer or a British singer, I don't think it would be equally authentic or exotic. I would recommend listening to this record with a lyric sheet, because despite his English being really great, there are some words that you may not get from hearing. Like, for example, he was singing a word think, and I thought it was theme. So it's better to have a lyric sheet. And now the final score of the record. Let me just say that I love this album. It's such a perfect record. It's probably one of the best records I've heard in a very, very long time. It's probably going to be one of my all-time favorite records, really. And I have absolutely no problems giving 10 points out of 10. Now, this is a genius record, a real masterpiece, and it's a very inspirational record for me. I have just finished my album. It's going to be released maybe in a month or 2 months. I also have one song that is kind of like oriental, so maybe if you like Orphaned, you will find that track interesting. But bravo, Orphaned. I mean, this is a great record. I can't wait to discover their older catalog. And it's really interesting that this is just a second album from 2018 that I've reviewed. But this record will definitely be in my top list. I even have some doubts if there will be any record to surpass this one, and if there will be any other record that I will say, okay, this is the best record of the year. Of course, the whole year is still ahead of us, so there are still plenty of records to come out, but this is really a very big surprise for me. The title of the album in Slovak means Neospevovaní prorokovia a mŕtvi spasitelia. Now that's badass. If you like this review, don't forget to like,
To share.
to subscribe. You can follow me on Facebook or on Instagram. You can find the links to both in the comment section below. If there are any bloopers at the end, you can check them out. And thanks a lot for watching.
Nie ciąkaj. And action. Hello there, Romans here, and welcome to another
Well, if you do what we did, then the eyebrows will not stay the same. Well, it's your hair. Where he refers